Talk a little secondary. This is your biggest position group. It is an extremely experienced position group, and it is a position group that a lot of your projection algorithms and metrics are projecting to be very, very good this year. And all right, first question I want to know come out of spring. Jarvis Brownlee, Kevin Knowles, or Marion Cooper. Is there anybody who is seriously in the mix to start at corner other than those three guys?
I don't think this is going to happen, which is a very weak way of responding to a question. I actually think Demore Tate is, if somebody comes out of left field, I think Tate is the guy that does it. I would, Lord knows there's no absent of want to see Travis Jay succeed in my heart. I would love to see it happen for that kid. And I was as optimistic about him going into last year as anybody could be, and it just didn't come together. At this point, I'm going to have to see it from Travis on the field to believe it. But if somebody emerges that's not in that group, I don't think it'll be Jones if he's still around. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be Jay. I think the old mega recruit, Demore Tate, if any of those guys are going to kind of come good, has the more likelihood of doing it.
I mean, look, if you want to bet long shots, you want to bet ones that can actually cash, right? That have the physical ability to do it. He's had so many injuries in Tallahassee, but if he could get right physically, I could see, maybe he challenges for that. I don't have super high hopes for Jerry and Jones, but that is a question of mine. Like, is he still in the mix or is he just still around? That's kind of the way I wrote that on my sheet. I think we'll find that out come this spring. He had a rather poor year last year.
UNC catch aside, it was disappointing for Jones, and not to pick on a kid, but kind of has been since he stepped in. So from one transfer that hasn't necessarily hit, Greedy Vance, but I was very interested, and I'm not trying to throw shots at other media outlets, but I was. There was such a wide response to Vance's declaration of leaving Louisville for Florida State, as far as positivity, skepticism from the broader media, that it was interesting to me. There's some tape on Vance that's pretty nasty, and I don't mean that in the fond kind of cool term,
right? Like it's open your mouth, nasty,
concerning, nasty. I'm a little skeptical on this. We'll have to see how it works. I know, obviously he's a talented kid out of a great high school there in New Orleans, and one that Florida State hopes to continue to get prospects from. But we'll have to see how this works out. I certainly don't think this is any kind of instant success, and we'll just have to see what it looks like for Vance. I don't, despite the number of snaps he took last year, I don't know that this is somebody that immediately comes in and starts consuming playing time. And if he does, I've got some concerns about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, there is some chance that they hit on him immediately. There's some chance that he is depth, and if he's depth, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. If they were able to use that as a way to sort of change up their roster composition some, this is probably the one position group, not corner specifically, but just the DBs, that still needs a good amount of culture work after 2 years of Mike Norvell's tenure. And maybe good amount is not an appropriate thing to say. That still needs some culture work to where maybe the habits are still a bit of a concern, not necessarily the talent level quite as much. So, yeah, we'll see what they get out of him. Travis Jay, we already mentioned. I mean, I think there's so many things outside of his control personally that affect his day-to-day life, which sucks. So I'm rooting for him to get that together, and just be able to have a couple months in a row of just consistency and then just a normalcy in his life. Safety. Probably need to talk about safety a little bit here before we get out of here. In the mix. Who is legitimately in the mix to start here, in your opinion?
I think Dent certainly is. I mean, Dent is very, very hit or miss. There'll be a play where you're like, yep, that's that 5-star recruit that we've all been excited about. And then there'll be a play where you're like, I don't know if Dent was particularly interested in what was going on there. So you certainly need a little bit more consistency from him. Obviously, Jamie Robinson and the effort that you put in to retain him and keep him in Tallahassee, bring him back. That guy's going to be probably one of the first names off the board when Bud and I do our snap count draft in a couple months. That's probably one of the safer bets. Not to, spoil a conversation that we're going to have on a kid in a couple of minutes, but you want another bold prediction, Bud?
I do.
By game 6, doesn't shock me if Azare Thomas isn't a starter for you. I think this guy emerges very, very quickly and becomes a player faster than most people think.
Okay, I can get with that.
I think he's the best kid you've signed in 3 years.
I mean, upside is off the charts. Will he be ready to contribute at a high level immediately? Like, we will learn that this spring. If he's ready to contribute this fall, we'll probably see enough flashes of it this spring. So that'll be fun. I'm excited to watch these guys. Now, how much do you get out of like a Sidney Williams if he can stay healthy? How much do you get out of Jarquez McClellan? How much do you get out of Shaheem Brown? Shaheem Brown's a guy we heard a lot about in camp and in a couple of the early games, and then just kind of didn't do much down the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
What do you get out of Hunter Washington? Right? Is he a guy that's going to be a hit for you, or is he more of a program depth piece, or is it too early to tell? Maybe we will start to learn more about that this spring. And then, Renardo Green. I don't have a very high opinion of Renardo Green. Maybe some on this staff do. Maybe you do. Are you? Who knows? I think we'll see. I guess we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, Green. Man, my opinion of Renardo Green has been all over the map during the last 2 years. I thought you really missed him when he went out with injury a year ago, and at the same time last year it was more or less kind of a non-factor. He would be a guy that it wouldn't shock me if he didn't decide to leave. And like you said, there may be a pretty decent variance in his of the opinion of Green internally, but when you're a guy that was starting 2 years ago, and then you're a guy that may be third on the depth chart, that's kind of a, again, if you want to do more than just have fun in Tallahassee, as far as your college football career, that's kind of the writing on the wall that you may need to go somewhere else to do it. Shaheem Brown's fascinating, man. I mean, the guys that are not prone to hyperbole were legitimately, whispering in our ear last year early on that they thought they may have a guy that's drafted in the second or third round on their hands. I mean, they really thought highly of this kid. And you're right, got a decent amount of snaps in the first couple of games, and then you started to see that snap count go nothing but in kind of a downward manner. So maybe that's injury, maybe that's just a freshman kind of hitting a freshman wall, a phrase that's more more in basketball than football, but you do have guys who just kind of their development stops at some point in time during their freshman year, and it doesn't mean that they're not going to ultimately be a player. But some of the raw athleticism that was displayed in spring last year or displayed in fall camp last year that had these coaches so excited about Brown, I think is still there, and hopefully a guy that sees a pretty big jump, and we can feel fairly confident about what he is and what his trajectory is within the program after spring. I think you've got to have one of these names in kind of this secondary group has got to hit. And in my opinion, Brown's probably the most likely to be it.
Yeah, I think that is pretty fair.